Good evening and welcome back to Mystic Matters. We are the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. I've missed you the last couple of segments. Tricia Walsh, welcome back.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be back in our brand new studio again.
It's wonderful.
And I have missed being here.
And I know there's a lot going on because we're ramping up for the summertime.
Oh, there is nonstop things going on right now. The biggest, and I don't want to say the best, but one of our huge events, the Mystic Outdoor Art Festival.
Can I say the best?
You can say the best. August 9th and 10th, we are still looking for volunteers. If you're interested, you can contact us at the Chamber, 860-572-9578.
That's fantastic, Tricia.
Yes,
So,
and that takes about 200 volunteers to run that event over the course of 2 days.
Right.
So we definitely rely on the local support.
and not only that, but it's also a time if you really are looking for something exciting to do, the nice weather. If you go and volunteer, doesn't matter what shift you take, I guarantee that you will meet somebody that you either haven't seen in a long time or hang out with the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce volunteers and friends, and I'm sure that you will have a great time. So anyways, this evening we've got a wonderful guest on.
We do.
She's new to the organization, but the organization is not new. So I would like to present at this time Denise Collins, Executive Director of MASH. And Denise, welcome. Welcome to Mystic Matters.
Thank you.
And you've been the Executive Director for how long?
For just almost a year now.
See, I knew that. I knew it was almost a year. And so you're the Executive Director for MASH.
That's correct.
Why don't we start off with what exactly does MASH stand for and what does your organization do?
So our mission is to end family homelessness. We cover the Greater Mystic area, but all of New London County. And when we talk about homelessness, I suppose we should really see, well, what does that look like for a family? And for many local families, the simple disparity between the income coming in and the high market rate rent going out means that their housing stability is threatened. So unfortunately, in our community, there are many families that find themselves without a place to call home. We have 3 programs at MASH. We have a shelter program. We have a program where we try to keep families out of shelter where possible. And then we have a program where we rehouse families. So our mission is to end family homelessness in our community.
Okay.
So
Okay. So how do you raise the funds to do
well,
that?
Okay, so there's 3 sources of income for MASH. There are grants, there's private donations, and then there's our annual fundraising event, which will occur this Friday at Enders Island, Friday, June 27th. This is an annual event.
It's a great event, Denise. It really is. I don't think I've ever missed one, but it's a
Yeah.
great event and always great weather.
Yeah, and it's such a stunning location. And every year we have an Iron Chef competition. This year is going to be a little bit different. We want to make it a more interactive experience, so we have mic'd the chefs.
Okay.
We can hear everything that they're saying. So if they're
They
under
better remember
pressure,
that.
they better behave.
Uh-oh.
Exactly. But also we're going to have samples for the crowd because we do have a judges table, but we want the crowd to vote. We want them to tell us,
Oh, I see. So
Yeah.
that is different.
yeah, so this
Yeah.
is going to be a fun event.
Yeah.
We have 2 casino chefs. We have Paragon from Foxwoods, Tuscany from Mohican Sun. We have
That's a big competition.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah.
We're going to have gourmet hors d'oeuvres for the crowd, an open bar, and after the competition, there'll be desserts provided by the Ocean House,
Wow.
sips of the real McCoy rum. So it's going to be a fun night. There'll be live music, and as usual, the live and silent auction.
Yeah, going on.
And I would like to say, because I've been with MASH for a year, there's 2 things that I've learned. One is that for so long as the local economy here is struggling, unfortunately there is a need for our services. However, the local community is really supportive of what we do. Local businesses, local individuals have really rallied together to help make this a successful event. We have a villa in St. John for a week for our live auction.
Did you hear that? Trisha, a
I might
villa
have to
in
make
St.
my
John.
second trip this year. I
Oh,
don't know.
lucky you.
Her favorite place.
We have a stunning oil painting from Delbore Bach.
Fantastic. I have a stunning small oil
This
painting.
is a large one, so
From Delberet
yeah,
Park.
it's absolutely stunning. We have wonderful packages from the 2 casinos. Stephen Clemente's new wine bar in North Stonington, Frizzante, he's offering wine tasting and tapas party for up to 40 people.
It's fantastic.
So, you know, and lots of really fantastic live auction items. And also with our silent auction, local businesses in the community have all
That's
donated
fantastic.
just wonderful experiences. So we're so grateful. It's just going to be a
What
great
time
night.
does it start?
Okay,
Sorry.
so it's Friday, June 27th,
Okay.
6 p.m.
Okay. So, Denise, I've been involved with MASH and have supported MASH over the years. And one of the things when I've had conversations with people in our local community, first things they say, listen, Suzette, Mystic, Stonington, really? There's a problem, there's a need? Homeless? Come on. There is.
There is a huge problem.
There is.
Yeah, absolutely. And unfortunately, when you look at what many families can earn on minimum wage, and then you look at market rate rent, it doesn't take much to threaten families' housing stability. A minor financial crisis, such as an expensive medical bill, a costly car repair, and let's remember we're in New London County, where transport is a challenge. Many families need a car to get to work.
Right, this isn't the city.
No, so families need a car to get to work. They have an expensive car repair. Their income is not very high. And that can be enough to mean that they can't pay their rent. They start to fall behind. It really is a huge problem in our area. For example, every year, there's a count of the number of families in shelter, and on a single night throughout the state, and on a single night in January this year, there were 50 families that were
Displaced?
well, they were living in shelter because they had been displaced. So it really is a question of market rate rent versus the income that families can earn. We've also seen a shift in our community from full-time work to part-time work.
Yes.
So many families are working 2 jobs, juggling childcare, and they're still struggling to pay their rent. In the winter, there's the problem with do they heat or eat? So we had a very severe winter. So they're paying they're paying extra money on the fuel.
And
to heat their
sometimes
home.
this is a hard time catching up.
Absolutely.
Because once you get into that sort of roller coaster backwards,
Yes.
then you're constantly trying to catch up.
Absolutely. We have evolved as an organization, though, where for those families who need to catch up, but they don't need a lot of help, and there's maybe one incident that's pushed them into crisis, we will help them to keep them housed where they are. We always try to do that. But unfortunately, there are those families who have already lost their housing when they come to us, and they do need to come into our shelter. But what we do then is we rehouse them as quickly as possible. Our goal is to rehouse a family within 30 days, because that's where a family needs to be, in their own home. They do not need to be in shelter. It's not good for them. It's not good for their children. And the tragedy of family homelessness is the damage that it does to children.
Oh, yes, yeah.
Studies have shown that homeless children are far more likely than their housed peers to end up in shelter as adults. We see young children with developmental delay, behavioral disorders, adolescents who are in trouble. We've seen a 13-year-old girl who has already been arrested several times. What I would say to you is, if you can remember being a teenager, how challenging that was. Well, imagine your family's worrying about where to sleep at night. They're sleeping in a car. They're moving from couch to couch. That's a really unstable, unsettling situation for a young person. So if we can help the children early on, well, then we are helping the next generation. So.
When was MASH started? What is the history of MASH?
So MASH began in 1997, and what happened was a lady had slept on the steps of the Union Baptist Church in Mystic. And the next day she went into the church and asked if she could use the facilities. And she then attended the service. And she wrote a note of thanks and left a $1 bill in the basket. And the minister at the time, Ken Carpenter, was so moved by her plight and understood that this was not an isolated incident that he gathered together other members of the faith community and of the business community to really examine the problem and see what could be done. So MASH was established and a shelter was set up. And for many years, MASH sheltered families who became homeless. In the past few years, however, MASH has evolved as national best practice has evolved to really try and end homelessness, to tackle the problem with the objective of ending homelessness. So now, rather than simply sheltering homeless families, we are doing two things. Number one, we're working very hard to stop the problem before it begins, so to divert families from shelters or to prevent them becoming homeless. And secondly, we minimize that time in shelter. So we minimize the trauma, the experience. And you know, that's working really well. The way that we do that is by coordinating with other service providers in New London County.
Right.
And this is where the community collaboration
Right.
is very exciting.
Right.
So 2 years ago, the family shelter providers in New London County got together to set up what we call a coordinated access system. And what that means is if a family is in need of shelter, if they're homeless, there's one way for them to get help. And they do that by calling 211. So if a family has a housing crisis, if they are homeless or if they are within 14 days of homelessness, they can call 211. They will speak with a housing specialist 24/7. Before this system was set up, a family in crisis would have to call around all the service providers, try
So
to
that's
get
an
hold.
actual number? That's
211?
That's specified
Yeah.
for homelessness, like the 911
Well,
is the
it's
emergency.
absolutely, and it's
Wow.
administered by United Way. They're the backbone organization that manage this process. So it's a wonderful process because as shelter providers and as homeless service providers, we are really targeting our resources where they are needed most, while a family that's in crisis can get help as soon as they need it.
Right.
Before that, they would be, you know, trying to get somebody, waiting on the phone, calling different providers, no availability in the shelter, maybe getting different case managers. So it was a very inefficient system. And the other thing is that as a group of providers, we know the different families that we're working with. We make sure that there's always a place for a family to sleep. If our shelter is full, we will find a family in need of shelter in New London or in Norwich. But we can also problem solve with the best approach for family in crisis. So it's working very well for the providers, and I believe it's working very well for families because they can access help when they need it.
So you already said that you work, in conjunction with a lot of the other groups in the area, and do you help once the homeless issue is solved, at least, they're placed into some sort of home, do you help with the other resources, like how to get a job?
Absolutely.
Or,
Yeah.
how, just even having to do your finances so you don't end up in that situation again?
Yeah, that's a great question because that's absolutely what we do. So, as soon as we meet with a family, after they've called 211, and the housing specialist has determined that this family is in crisis, they are either homeless or they are about to be homeless, we will meet them the next day. Each of the providers has a day of the week to meet a family in crisis. Every Friday, our case manager meets families at Groton Human Services. And once we meet that family, they become our client. So they may need help with a past utility bill. They may need help with past month's rent. But we are absolutely there to case manage with them and provide whatever services they need. We have a full-time social worker. We provide job search, resume writing. We connect them to step-up programs if possible. We help with childcare. All of that. And any family that comes into shelter immediately is given a sort of budgeting workshop. So we show them, right, this is what it looks like. And then we work on the housing location piece. And as soon as that family has been rehoused, we absolutely, we're there as a resource for so long as that family wants us. Because remember, there are some families who, once they have been got that little bit of help,
Right.
they're fine.
Right,
Because it was
right.
just a medical crisis or a
Right.
car repair or something that it was a minor crisis. But for other families, we may be a resource for a year.
Right.
So we're there for so long as they want or need us.
So 2 questions I have. When you have a family, especially with young children, are they able to stay in the same school system?
Yeah, and that's
And you try, because I mean, let's say, there's somebody in Groton, but there's only availability shelter in Norwich. So number 1, how does that work? And number 2, is it necessarily, is a mom and dad sort of family unit, or are we talking more, this percentage more as a single mom and a family?
we do see a higher percentage of single mothers, but we absolutely see the entire family unit. We see single fathers. It's across the whole spectrum.
Okay.
And the only eligibility requirement that we have is that the parents have minor children in their care. And whether it's a single father, single mother, or the entire family unit, they're the families that we provide services to. But that's a really great question about schooling, because that's really critical, for us, is to keep the children stabilized. So children who are in shelter are absolutely kept in the same school system. And there is state funding for that.
Okay, so that was the other, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. However, I should also add that when we are helping to rehouse a family from shelter, we really look at where they have their community supports, and we try to keep the children in the same school. Sometimes it's not possible because the parents have lost their job and they get a job in some other area, but that's, where the parents work, where the children go to school, they are, huge priorities.
Okay, because I would imagine that there's a psychological effect.
Absolutely.
So is there a help there as well? I mean, with the parents and the children. I mean, I know if, God forbid, one of us were displaced at some time, and you know what, it could happen. It could happen to anybody. But just the psychological effect on the whole family unit, especially if you get the mom or the dad, they're at the lowest point of their life. How much more will that domino effect back down to the children? So is it this case manager that basically handles it, or is there somebody that they are allowed, or I wouldn't say allowed, or that they can talk to?
Absolutely. So while they are working with us, our social worker will provide whatever services that she can, but we absolutely connect with all the other available community resources. We partner with Southeastern Mental Health Authority,
Okay.
With all of the local human services, with various Head Start programs for young children. So we are connected to all of those services, and we will connect or refer families as and when needed. And you make a really good point about the traumatic effect on the parents and the children, which is why we work very hard at the front end in keeping children and families out of shelter. We view shelter as the last option for families. So by having this 2-on-1 resource where families in crisis can call and then meeting us before they're actually homeless, we will always try to work with them, and if there's any way to keep them out of shelter, we will do that. And over the past 2 years at MASH, we have provided that assistance to, I'm just trying to, about 70, 80 families, and none of those families have subsequently come into shelter. So it's absolutely been 100% successful. So it's keep families and children out of the homeless system, because once a family comes into the homeless system, there can be a downward spiral. It's very stressful, very depressing, which again is why we limit that time in shelter. We don't want families to feel despondent, to fall into despair. As soon as they come in, day one, we say, this is a 30-day process. We're going to, within 30 days, find you housing. And that family may not have their job within 30 days, but we are working with them. So we will rehouse the family, set them up in their own home, and then work with them for so long as it takes to stabilize them.
Well, and for the housing, so once they're out of the shelter, is there specific groups that you work with in terms of apartments that allot a certain amount for these families, or do you just rely on generous donors that may have a spare house, for instance, or is it just, you know, kind of a mix?
That is a great question, because this is always the challenge, and we have a full-time housing coordinator, and our housing coordinator works with landlords in the area throughout New London County, and those landlords know us, because part of her job is to persuade landlords to take tenants who've had evictions. And to say, we know this family is going to be okay because we're working with them and they had a bump in the road, or, you know, we're helping them with job search. So once they know that we're there as a support, they are prepared to house the family. Without our support, that family can find it very, very difficult to be rehoused because they've had an eviction, or they might have some other issue in their history that's making it difficult for them, you know, for a landlord to want to take them. So our housing coordinator has all of these relationships, and that's a really, really important role that she has. And she will also rehouse families from the other shelters, because part of our collaboration with the other shelter providers means that we all work together. So if our shelter, you know, our shelter is full, we've rehoused somebody, and, you know, there's an interim period where our housing coordinator can work with another provider, well, she does that.
Yeah.
So,
Denise, you know, I'm listening to, and you know, I'm very familiar with MASH, because I've been involved in the past years, but I learned something every time I've had the opportunity to speak with somebody from MASH, and you coming on for a year. But if I know about MASH, and Tricia knows about MASH, and you know, I was just thinking, if it was a situation where just a person was in that situation, how would they even know about MASH? I mean, where would they go? I mean, and how would they even know 211? You know, and I just really think that this is a very important organization and a very important statement to make to the community, and also to the extended community outside of our own community, because I think that a normal person, if we had somebody in need, Tricia and I could say 211 and let me call somebody from MASH, but we're entrenched in the community and we know what's going on. So what is the future for MASH? I mean, where can we see more MASHs, or a bigger MASH? Is there a sort of a 5-year plan out that would get this message? Well, its message is New London County, I guess.
it is,
And I don't know if we could, if an organization like yours could handle something outside of New London County, but the mission itself.
yeah, well, I know that you know about MASH, because you keep asking the good questions.
Yeah.
From July this year, there will be statewide rollout of 211. So this will be publicized, and so what we found in New London County is we have been operating this system for just over 2 years, and the first year there were 600 calls from families to 211. Last year there were almost 1,000.
That's almost double.
Yeah, we believe the need is similar, but the increase has been because we've publicized 211 as a resource.
Yes.
So that will continue, particularly after 211 is rolled out statewide. So that's how families will know that that's where they go to get help. And I should also say that we're a community and people talk to each other. So, you know, families in crisis will tell friends in crisis, this is what you do, you call 211. So.
Right.
Well, and I do know the 211, the awareness campaign, I remember seeing quite a bit about that over the winter with, you know, just families struggling with heating oil and things like that. So I think just really...
Getting the word out there.
211? I'm like, I knew immediately from the commercials, but I think that it would be really great if we can see more of that.
Yes.
Now, just one quick question for you. How many staff do you have?
We have 4.
Yeah.
It's
That's
amazing.
a pretty amazing amount of work that comes out of your
We have a lot of volunteers.
Yeah.
We really get a lot of help, but we have our full-time social worker, our full-time housing coordinator, our office administrator, and me.
Yeah.
But because we connect with the other providers, because we've got great community support, volunteers, we can achieve a lot.
Yeah.
Well, Denise Collins, I just I met Denise about a year ago. I thought she was fabulous then. I think she's fabulous now. I do encourage you to come to this wonderful event, which is this Friday, Iron Chef Contest. It's just wonderful on the beautiful Enders Island. Thank you, Father Tom, and everybody else who's involved. But also just to get involved with MASHshelter.org. You've got the information right up there, and I'm sure Denise will be available for you too. But this is a great fundraiser that's coming up this Friday, and I tell you, I'm going to be there. It's one that I always have on my calendar, and I assure you, you will have a great time. But Denise, I encourage you to come back and see us again, because every year we learn something different about MASH, and I encourage everybody to get involved. So thank you, Denise.
Thank you.
For this
you.
evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tricia.
Thank you, Suzette.
You know, it's nice to have you back, and we are Mystic Matters, the Greater Mystic Chamber of Commerce. Good evening.